This is the case of Neil Howard, a 46-year-old man from Illinois. He was recently convicted of a grave crime. The charge was first-degree murder. The victim was his own mother. Her name was Norma Caraker. Norma Caraker was 60 years old at the time of her death. Give a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. A murder occurred in September of 2023. The method used was strangulation. This was a violent act resulting in death. The weapon employed was a common household item. It was a bungee cord. This cord became the instrument of her demise. The crime took place within Norma Caraker's own residence. This was the home she shared with her son. It was meant to be a place of safety. The home is located in Troy, Illinois. This quiet community became the scene of a horrific event. The details shocked local residents. Caraker was discovered deceased in her bed. A bungee cord was found tightly wrapped around her neck. This indicated the cause of death. Investigation into the circumstances began immediately. Evidence suggested she was murdered shortly after returning home. She had reportedly just come back from a date. The prosecution presented a clear motive during the trial. Assistant State's Attorney Luke Yeager articulated the state's theory. The motive stemmed from deep-seated issues. It was rooted in Howard's growing resentment towards his mother. This resentment had reportedly been building over time. It created a toxic environment. A primary source of this resentment related to her dating life. Howard allegedly disapproved of his mother's relationships. He reportedly referred to her sleeping around. Another point of contention was financial. Resentment also related to her alleged refusal to provide him with money. Howard reportedly relied on his mother for support. Howard's anger over these issues escalated significantly. The situation reportedly worsened as tensions rose. The relationship deteriorated. On the night of the murder, Howard reportedly became intoxicated. Alcohol consumption likely fueled his existing anger. This impaired his judgment. The prosecution argued that Howard reached a breaking point. His frustration with his mother's lifestyle became overwhelming. This led to the fatal confrontation. The state contended that the combination of resentment, financial disputes, and intoxication culminated in the violent act. This was the motive presented to the jury. It painted a picture of domestic conflict turned deadly. Neil Howard resided in the basement of his mother's home. He lived there at the time of the murder. This placed him in close proximity to the victim. It was Howard who ultimately contacted emergency services. He called 911 in the early hours of the morning. He reported a problem with his mother. He claimed during the call that his mother was unresponsive. He presented the situation as a medical emergency. This initiated the official response. The Troy Police Department responded to the call. Officers were dispatched to the residence. They arrived to assess the situation. Police arrived at the home at approximately 1:30 a.m. The date was September 13, 2023. This was when the crime scene was discovered. Upon arrival, officers found Norma Caraker deceased. The circumstances immediately suggested foul play. The presence of the bungee cord was a critical indicator. Howard was present at the scene when police arrived. His account of events was questioned. The investigation began to focus on him. The initial 911 call and Howard's presence were key elements. They were part of the timeline established by investigators. This sequence of events led to his eventual arrest. The investigation into Norma Caraker's death commenced rapidly. Evidence at the scene quickly pointed towards murder. The nature of the injury was conclusive. The investigation gathered forensic evidence and witness statements. Howard was questioned extensively. His statements were analyzed for inconsistencies. Based on the evidence collected, Neil Howard was arrested. He was charged with the murder of his mother. The legal process began. The case proceeded to trial. The trial took place in Madison County, Illinois. It was a significant legal proceeding. The trial lasted for a period of 2 weeks. Both the prosecution and the defense presented their cases. Evidence and testimony were heard. The prosecution laid out their case detailing the motive and the events of that night. They presented evidence linking Howard to the crime. The bungee cord was a central piece of evidence. The defense presented their arguments. They attempted to counter the state's evidence. They sought to create reasonable doubt. After hearing all the evidence and testimony, the case went to the jury. The jury was tasked with determining Howard's guilt or innocence. This was a critical phase. The jury deliberated for a relatively short period. Their deliberations lasted approximately 3 hours. They carefully considered the evidence presented. The jury returned a verdict. The verdict was guilty. Neil Howard was found guilty of first-degree murder. The conviction confirmed the state's case. The jury agreed that Howard intentionally caused his mother's death. This concluded the guilt phase of the legal process. Following the conviction, a sentencing hearing was held. This hearing determined the punishment for Neil Howard's crime. It was a somber proceeding. Assistant State's Attorney Luke Yeager represented the state at sentencing. He presented arguments for a specific sentence. He requested a lengthy prison term. Yeager requested a sentence of 45 years in prison. This was the state's recommendation. It reflected the severity of the crime. The state cited Howard's history of violence as a factor. This history was presented to the court. It included past incidents. His history included prior arrests involving family members. These incidents demonstrated a pattern of behavior. They were relevant to sentencing. The history also included at least one order of protection. This order had been issued against Howard previously. It indicated past conflicts and threats. Yeager emphasized Howard's violent tendencies. He highlighted that these tendencies were particularly directed towards women. This was a significant point for the prosecution. The state argued that a substantial sentence was necessary. It was needed to punish Howard and protect the public. His history demonstrated a risk. Circuit Judge Amy Mayer presided over the sentencing hearing. She heard arguments from both sides. She considered the evidence and the law. Judge Maher ultimately sentenced Neil Howard. The sentence was less than the state requested. It was still a significant term of imprisonment. The sentence handed down was 30 years in prison. This is a lengthy period of incarceration. It reflects the gravity of the first-degree murder conviction. A crucial aspect of the sentence was the lack of possibility for early release. Judge Maher ordered that Howard must serve the full sentence. There is no parole eligibility. Under Illinois law, a sentence for first-degree murder typically requires serving 100% of the term. This ensures that the convicted individual serves the entire time ordered by the court. Neil Howard will spend the next 3 decades incarcerated. The sentencing concluded the legal proceedings in this case. Neil Howard was held accountable for his actions. The life of Norma Caraker was tragically ended by her own son. The case serves as a stark reminder of domestic violence. It highlights how family conflicts can escalate with devastating consequences. The motive, rooted in control and resentment, led to a mother's death. The community of Troy, Illinois, grappled with the reality of this crime. A seemingly quiet home became the scene of a brutal murder. The legal system processed the case to its conclusion. Neil Howard's fate is now sealed. He will serve 30 years in prison for the murder of his mother. There is no possibility of early release from this sentence. The case underscores the complexities of family dynamics. It also demonstrates the legal system's response to acts of extreme violence. The objective facts presented a clear picture of the crime. The evidence of strangulation with a bungee cord was compelling. Howard's own call to 911 placed him at the scene. The motive presented by the state provided context for the act. The jury's swift deliberation indicated their certainty. The guilty verdict was reached after careful consideration of the facts. The legal process moved deliberately towards justice. The sentencing phase considered Howard's past behavior. His history of violence towards family members was a factor. The judge weighed these elements in determining the sentence. While the state sought a longer term, 30 years is a substantial punishment. Serving the full sentence ensures a long period of incapacitation. This case is now closed in the courts. The tragic events of September 2023 in Troy, Illinois, resulted in a life lost and a son imprisoned. The details of the crime and the motive paint a grim picture. this case stands as a somber example of domestic homicide. The legal outcome provides a measure of finality. Neil Howard will serve his time. The memory of Norma Caraker remains, a victim of a son's fatal rage. The objective facts of the case were presented and judged. The legal process followed its course. The sentence reflects the severity of taking a life. This case serves as a study in criminal justice. It involves elements of domestic violence, motive, investigation, trial, and sentencing. Each phase was critical to the outcome. For legal professionals and students, it offers insights into prosecution strategy and sentencing considerations. For the public, it is a tragic story of a family destroyed by violence. The details are disturbing, but necessary for understanding the case. The use of a common object, a bungee cord, as the murder weapon adds a chilling detail. It highlights the opportunistic nature of the crime. The act was personal and brutal. Howard's alleged resentment over his mother's dating life and finances reveals a disturbing sense of entitlement and control. These factors reportedly fueled his anger. They culminated in the fatal confrontation. The 911 call, initially framed as a medical emergency, quickly unraveled. The scene discovered by police told a different story. The truth emerged through investigation. The trial presented the evidence methodically. The jury's role was to weigh the facts and apply the law. Their verdict was decisive. The sentencing phase considered both the crime itself and the offender's history. Howard's past violence was a significant aggravating factor. The judge's decision balanced these elements. 30 years without parole is a severe sentence. It ensures that Neil Howard will be incarcerated for a very long time. Justice, in the eyes of the court, has been served. The case of Neil Howard and Norma Caraker is a tragic chapter in the history of Troy, Illinois. It is a stark reminder of the potential for violence within families. The legal system responded to this act of first-degree murder. The details are difficult, but they are the facts of the case. A son killed his mother over perceived slights and control issues. He used a bungee cord to end her life. He was found guilty by a jury of his peers. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison with no possibility of early release. This concludes the legal narrative of this somber event.